In the beginning, there was the land of fire and the land of ice. When these two lands collided, they created the gods. The most notable of the Norse gods was Odin. When the gods noticed that civilization was getting big, Odin recruited the help of two ravens, Hugin and Munin, in order to watch over the people. Ravens played an integral part in the civilization of Iceland. They were meaningful to the gods and viewed as an ally to the settlers. Today, ravens are considered a vulnerable species in Iceland due to overhunting. Changes in the perception of the raven species occurred during the religious conversion of Iceland, ultimately harming the conservation efforts of ravens in Iceland. According to Norse mythology, Odin was the leader of the gods. He was also the god of war and of poetry. He was seen as both ruthless and intelligent. Because creation was large, Odin recruited two ravens, Hugin and Munin, to watch over his people each day, and every night they reported back to him what they had heard. The ravens were viewed as parallels of Odin. Due to a scavenging nature, they were also seen as ruthless due to their frequent associations with death. They were seen as intelligent because they could understand the human dialect and communicate with Odin. In nearly every early depiction of Odin, he is seen with his two accompanying ravens. The relationship between the birds and Odin has been disputed between historians. Hugin comes from the root word of thought, and Munin means desires and emotions. This led some historians to believe that the ravens represented different segments of Odin's persona. Others believed that they were just his spirit animals and showed his character of ruthless and intelligent nature. The last school of thought was that Hugin and Munin were detachable parts of Odin's consciousness that were used to patrol the earth. Early Icelandic settlers saw this symbiotic relationship between Odin and the ravens, and they viewed ravens as allies. During the settlement age, the Icelandic people used ravens to their advantage. They were frequently seen on sea voyages, such as the first settler, Floki's journey to Iceland. He used ravens in order to find where there was land. If they set the raven out to sea and it never returned, that meant that land was straight ahead and they could keep traveling. If the raven returned back to the ship, that meant that there was no land available for the raven to land on. Ravens were also helpful on farms. It was believed that having a raven on the farm during the day meant that the bad spirits were warded away. There were better crop yields on farms that saw ravens. Farmers would also notice the societal patterns of the ravens and how they used to cluster together. Early Icelandic settlers believed that this was a form of social organization and began to model their own social organization off of what they viewed the ravens to do. Another daily activity of early Icelandic settlers was hunting and food accumulation. When a raven was around, it was thought that there would be food around, so the hunters would follow the ravens, and they would ultimately find where there was available food sources. This became a mutualistic relationship because ravens would then follow hunters and get excess food from the hunters when they were hunting. Early settlers also believed that ravens could predict the future. If a raven walked with you for the day, that meant that you'd have good fortune for the rest of the day. If there was a raven making noise on a house, it meant that there was trouble out at sea. If there was a group of ravens making noise, it meant that a whale was breached, so there would be a plentiful amount of fish near the shore. The settlers believed that they had a partnership with the species and regarded them as friends. This viewpoint shifted in 1000 AD during the Christian conversion of Iceland. During this conversion, the Icelanders began to view the scavenging nature of ravens in a negative light. When it used to reflect the war seen with Odin, it now reflected the devil. The Icelandic people used this nature against the ties to Odin and turned away from the respect that they once had from the ravens. One common myth that began to spread around Iceland was that there was a raven who greeted you in hell to tear off the eyes of backtalkers. No one wanted to be associated with ravens anymore after that. Not only were the dark creatures related to death and hell, they were later related to witchcraft. In Iceland, there is also a large witch hunt, similarly to the one that was seen in Salem, Massachusetts. and it was seen that ravens were used to help the witches because they were viewed as symbols of magic. This further negated the good relationship that ravens had once had with the people of Iceland. As time passed, the reputation had further deteriorated. During settlement, there was a popular superstition that doing harm to a raven would result in bad luck for the rest of your life. But during the 20th century, Icelanders began to hunt ravens for sport, similarly to this picture. And today, nearly 3,000 ravens are killed annually due to hunting in Iceland. According to the Icelandic Institute of National History, it's estimated that there are only 2,500 nesting pairs of ravens left in the world. They are recognized as a vulnerable species in Iceland, and they are threatened in their habitat of Iceland. The changes in the perception of the raven species that occurred during the religious conversion of Iceland ultimately harmed the conservation efforts of these Icelandic birds. In conclusion, the way in which we perceive elements of nature can be impacted by larger scale societal factors, such as religion.